Discovery and First Contact. The vast expanse of space stretched out before the UES Curiosity, a small exploration vessel that barely qualified as more than an oversized shuttle. Despite its size, the ship bristled with the latest in human sensor technology, a testament to humanity's insatiable desire to push the boundaries of the known universe. Captain Zara Chen stood on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. At 35, she was young for a captain, but her brilliance in xenoanthropology and her quick thinking in crisis situations had earned her this command. Her crew of 5 was equally exceptional, each chosen for their unique skills and adaptability. "Dr. Emerson," Zara called out, "anything interesting on the long-range scans?" Dr. Lily Emerson, the ship's chief scientist, furrowed her brow as she studied her console. "Captain, I'm picking up some unusual readings about 3 light years out. It doesn't match any known stellar phenomena." Zara's interest peaked. "Can you put it on the main display?" The hologram flickered, zooming in on a region of space that seemed, at first glance, to be empty. But as the image enhanced, they could see faint wisps of energy, like gossamer threads stretching across the void. "What are we looking at, Doctor?" Zara asked, leaning forward to study the display. Lily shook her head, her red curls bouncing with the movement. "I'm not entirely sure, Captain. These energy signatures, they're unlike anything in our database. They seem to be remnants of some kind of massive energy discharge, but on a scale I've never seen before." The ship's pilot, Lieutenant Akira Tanaka, spoke up from his station. "Captain, should I plot a course to investigate?" Zara hesitated for a moment. Their mission was one of exploration. True, but venturing into unknown territory always carried risks. She glanced around at her crew, seeing the excitement and curiosity in their eyes. It was that same curiosity that had driven humanity to the stars in the first place. "Plot the course, Lieutenant," she decided. "But approach with caution. We don't know what we're dealing with here." As the Curiosity changed course, Zara felt a familiar thrill run through her. This was why she had joined the United Earth Space Force, for moments like these, when humanity stood on the brink of discovery. The journey to the anomaly took several hours, during which time the crew prepared for every contingency they could imagine. Dr. Emerson worked tirelessly to refine her scans, while the ship's engineer, Raj Patel, ensured all systems were operating at peak efficiency. As they drew closer, the true scale of what they were approaching became apparent. The energy wisps they had detected were actually vast, stretching across millions of kilometers of space. They pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light that seemed to defy the laws of physics as humanity understood them. "My God," whispered Security Officer Maria Gonzalez, her hand instinctively moving to the sidearm at her hip. What could have caused this? Before anyone could respond, the ship's communication officer, Thomas Chen, no relation to the captain, called out in alarm, "Captain, we're receiving a transmission." The bridge fell silent, all eyes turning to Thomas. Zara's heart raced. First contact. It had to be. Nothing else made sense. "Source?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Thomas shook his head, bewildered. "Unknown, Captain. It's not coming from any specific point. It's like it's coming from the energy field itself." "Put it through," Zara ordered, straightening her uniform. At first, there was only static. Then, slowly, a voice emerged. It was unlike anything they had ever heard before, not quite mechanical, not quite organic. It spoke in a language that was beautiful and terrifying in its alienness. Dr. Emerson's fingers flew over her console. "The universal translator is struggling, Captain. Give it a moment." Seconds ticked by, feeling like an eternity. Then suddenly, words began to form. "Intruders in the battlefield. Identify yourselves or be destroyed." Zara's blood ran cold. Battlefield. They had stumbled into some kind of conflict zone. She nodded to Thomas, who opened a channel. This is Captain Zora Chen of the United Earth Space Force vessel Curiosity. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration. We mean no harm and respectfully request to communicate." There was a long pause, during which Zora could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. When the response came, it was not what any of them expected. "Impossible. No new species have entered this sector in 800,000 years. You are a deception. Prepare to be eliminated." The energy field around them began to pulse more intensely. Alarms blared across the bridge as the ship's systems detected a massive power surge building up around them. "Evasive maneuvers," Zara shouted, but Akira was already moving, his hands dancing across the controls. The Curiosity dove and weaved through the energy field, narrowly avoiding lances of crackling energy that shot past them. Each blast was powerful enough to vaporize their small vessel instantly. "We need to prove we're real," Lily shouted over the chaos. "Captain, if I can modify our shields to emit a unique quantum signature, it might convince them." "Do it," Zara ordered, gripping her chair as the ship shuddered under a near miss. For several tense minutes, Lily worked feverishly at her station, while Akira performed piloting feats that defied belief. Just as it seemed their luck was about to run out, Lily shouted in triumph. "Activating now." A ripple of energy passed over the ship's hull. Almost immediately, the attacks ceased. An eerie calm settled over the battlefield. The alien voice returned, this time tinged with what could only be described as shock. You are real. You are new. How is this possible?" Zara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "As I said, we are explorers. We only just discovered this region of space. Please, can you tell us what's happening here?" There was a pause, and then the voice spoke again, this time accompanied by a shimmering hologram that appeared on the bridge. The being it depicted was unlike anything they had ever seen. A swirling mass of energy in vaguely humanoid form. "I am Commander Xylix of the Eternal Armada. For 800,000 of your years, we have been locked in combat with the Void Collective in this sector. It was believed that all sentient life in this part of the galaxy had either been destroyed or had fled. Your arrival changes everything." The crew of the Curiosity exchanged glances of astonishment. 800,000 years of continuous warfare was beyond comprehension. Zara stepped forward, her diplomatic training kicking in. "Commander Xylix, we had no idea we were entering a war zone. We apologize for any disruption we may have caused. Perhaps we can help in some way. Find a path to peace." The energy being that was Xylix seemed to flicker, as if laughing. "Peace? The concept is foreign to us now. We fight because we must, because it is all we know. But surely after so long, the original reasons for the conflict have been lost." Zora pressed, feeling a deep sadness for these beings trapped in endless war. Xylix's form pulsed thoughtfully. "Perhaps, but how does one end a war that has lasted for eons? The Void Collective would never agree to." Suddenly, Xylix's form flickered violently. "Warning. Void Collective ships approaching. You must leave, humans. This is not your fight." Zora looked at her crew, seeing the determination in their eyes that mirrored her own. In that moment, she made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "No," she said firmly. "We won't run. Commander Xylix, with your permission, we'd like to stay and attempt to negotiate a ceasefire. This war has gone on long enough." Xylix's form stabilized, regarding Zara with what seemed like a mixture of surprise and respect. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Captain Chen. But I find myself curious to see what your species can do." "Very well. Prepare yourselves. The Void Collective approaches, and they are not known for their diplomacy." As the Curiosity sensors detected the approach of the enemy fleet, Zara and her crew steeled themselves for what was to come. They had come seeking discovery and found themselves on the brink of a conflict older than human civilization itself. But where others might see hopelessness, Zara saw opportunity. Humanity had always thrived in the face of impossible odds. Now they had the chance to prove that their species' greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their weapons, but in their capacity for empathy, innovation, and peace. As the first ships of the Void Collective emerged from the swirling energy field, Zara squared her shoulders and prepared to face the greatest challenge of her life. The smallest ship humanity had ever sent into deep space was about to take on an 800,000-year-old war, armed with nothing but courage, ingenuity, and hope. The battle for peace was about to begin. The 800,000-year war. The bridge of the UES Curiosity crackled with tension as the Void Collective ships emerged from the swirling energy field. Unlike the ethereal form of Commander Xylix, these vessels were solid, their hulls a deep, light-absorbing black that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around them. Captain Zara Chen stood tall, her voice steady as she addressed her crew. "Remember, we're here to establish peace. Let's show them what humanity can do." As if on cue, a new voice boomed across their communications channel, deep and resonant, like the echo of a distant supernova. "Eternal Armada, your destruction is at hand. Eons of conflict en tow." The voice paused, a note of confusion entering its tone. "What is this? An anomaly?" Zara took a deep breath and stepped forward. "This is Captain Zara Chen of the United Earth Space Force vessel Curiosity. We come in peace and wish to open a dialogue between the Eternal Armada and the Void Collective." Silence stretched across the vastness of space. Zara could feel the weight of history pressing down on this moment. After what felt like an eternity, the voice of the Void Collective responded. "A new species? Impossible. This must be an Eternal Armada trick." Before Zara could respond, Xylix's shimmering form appeared beside her. "It is no trick, Void Commander Nix. These humans stumbled upon our war by chance. They wish to help end it." Another long pause followed. When Nix spoke again, their voice carried a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "End the war? Preposterous. The war is eternal, as we are eternal." Dr. Lily Emerson stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "If I may, how did this conflict begin? Surely there must have been a reason." The question seemed to catch both alien commanders off guard. Xylix and Nix exchanged what could only be described as a puzzled look, despite their alien features. "The war began," Xylix started, then faltered. "Because it had to," Nix finished, though the reply sounded more like a question than a statement. Zara seized on this moment of uncertainty. "Commander Xylix, Commander Nix, would you be willing to share the history of your conflict with us? Perhaps with fresh eyes, we might see a path to resolution that has been overlooked." After a moment of silent communication between the two alien leaders, they agreed. What followed was a history lesson that left the human crew in awe. 800 millennia ago, the Eternal Armada and the Void Collective were not enemies, but two halves of a single, massively advanced civilization. The Eternal Armada represented the physical realm, masters of matter and energy. The Void Collective embodied the metaphysical, lords of space and time. Together, they had achieved wonders beyond human comprehension, reshaping galaxies and harnessing the power of black holes. But with great power came great responsibility, and eventually, philosophical differences arose. The Eternal Armada believed their power should be used to nurture and protect younger civilizations. The Void Collective argued for non-interference, allowing the natural course of cosmic evolution to play out. This ideological schism grew over time, eventually erupting into open conflict. What began as a political dispute escalated into a war that engulfed their entire civilization. As the conflict raged, both sides poured more and more of their resources and consciousness into the war effort. Centuries became millennia, and millennia became millions of years. The original civilian populations of both factions uploaded their consciousness into their war machines, transforming into the energy beings and void ships the humans now encountered. As Xylix and Nix recounted their history, Zara and her crew listened in stunned silence. The scale of the conflict was beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. When the tale was done, Raj Patel, the ship's engineer, was the first to speak. But if you've been fighting for so long, surely you've exhausted all your resources. How do you sustain this war? Xylix's form pulsed thoughtfully. We have long since transcended the need for traditional resources. Our bodies and ships are one, fueled by the very fabric of space-time itself. We are the war, Nyx added, their voice echoing with the weight of ends. And the war is us. To end it would be to end ourselves. Dr. Emerson's eyes widened with realization. You're trapped, she whispered. You've evolved to the point where conflict is your natural state. Peace isn't just difficult for you. It's existentially terrifying. A heavy silence fell over the assembled beings, both human and alien. The true nature of the 800,000-year war was finally laid bare, and it was more tragic than any of them could have imagined. Zara's mind raced, trying to find a way forward. How could they help beings so ancient and powerful overcome millennia of ingrained behavior? The challenge seemed insurmountable, but she refused to give up. Commanders, she said, her voice filled with determination. Your history is tragic, but it's not your destiny. Humanity has faced its own conflicts, its own existential crisis. We've stared into the abyss of our own extinction more than once. But each time, we found a way to grow, to change, to become better than we were. She paused, looking from Xylix to Nyx and back again. You've forgotten how to exist without war, but we haven't. Let us help you remember. Let us show you that there's more to existence than this endless conflict. For a long moment, neither alien commander responded. Then, almost imperceptibly, both began to nod. Your words are intriguing, Captain Chen, Xylix said slowly. But how would you propose to end an 800,000-year war? Nyx's ship seemed to pulse in agreement. Yes, human. What solution could your young species possibly offer to our ancient conflict? Zara smiled, a plan already forming in her mind. First, we need to establish a neutral ground for negotiations. A place where both sides can meet as equals, free from the constraints of your usual battlefield. She turned to her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. And I think I know just the place. It might be small, but sometimes the biggest changes come in the smallest packages. As understanding dawned on her crew's faces, Zara turned back to the alien commanders. Gentle beings, I'd like to formally invite you aboard the UVS Curiosity. Let's see if we can't make a little history of our own. As Xylix and Nyx considered her offer, Zara couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Humanity might be young, but they had something these ancient beings had lost long ago: hope. And sometimes, hope was the most powerful force in the universe. The stage was set. On a tiny human ship, dwarfed by the vast energies of an age-old galactic war, the seeds of peace were about to be planted. The greatest diplomatic challenge in human history was about to begin, and the fate of civilizations hung in the balance. Human ingenuity unleashed. The UES Curiosity, a vessel designed for scientific exploration, now found itself hosting two of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Commander Xylix of the Eternal Armada and Commander Nyx of the Void Collective stood on opposite sides of the ship's small conference room, their forms rippling with barely contained energy. Captain Zara Chen sat at the head of the table, her crew arrayed around her. The tension in the room was palpable. 800 millennia of conflict compressed into a space barely larger than a standard Earth apartment. Commanders, Zara began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Thank you for agreeing to these talks. We understand that peace may seem foreign to you after so long, but we believe it's possible. Xylix's form shimmered, a gesture that the humans had come to interpret as skepticism. And how do you propose to achieve this peace, Captain? Our conflict is as fundamental as the forces that shape the universe. Nyx's deep voice resonated through the room. Indeed, Our war is not merely about territory or resources. It is a clash of ideologies, a battle for the very nature of existence itself. Dr. Lily Emerson leaned forward, her scientific curiosity evident in her eyes. But that's just it, isn't it? You've been fighting for so long that you've forgotten there are other ways to resolve ideological differences. Security Officer Maria Gonzalez nodded in agreement. On Earth, we've had our share of ideological conflicts, but we've learned that diversity of thought can be a strength, not just a source of conflict. Zara smiled at her crew's input. This was why she believed in humanity's potential, their ability to see problems from new angles, to think outside the box. Commanders, she said, what if we could show you a way to coexist, to pursue your ideologies without the need for destruction? Both alien beings turned their attention to Zara. Their interest peaked despite centuries of ingrained hostility. We're listening, Captain, Xylix said cautiously. Zara nodded to her chief engineer, Raj Patel, who stood and activated a holographic display in the center of the table. We've been analyzing the energy signatures of your civilizations, Raj explained, his fingers dancing over the controls. And we've noticed something fascinating. Your energies are not just compatible, they're complementary. The hologram showed two swirling masses of energy, one representing the Eternal Armada, the other the Void Collective. As the simulation progressed, the energies began to intertwine, creating complex, beautiful patterns. In essence, Raj continued, you're two halves of a whole. Your conflict arises from seeing yourselves as separate, but in reality, you're deeply connected. Dr. Emerson picked up the thread. We propose a symbiosis. Instead of fighting, you could work together, combining your unique perspectives and abilities to achieve even greater wonders than you could alone. The alien commanders watched the simulation in silence, their forms flickering with what the humans hoped was contemplation rather than anger. An intriguing theory, Nix rumbled after a long moment. But how would this work in practice? Our forces have been conditioned for war for eons. Zara leaned forward, her eyes shining with determination. That's where we come in. We propose a series of controlled experiments, gradually integrating small units from both sides to work on joint projects. We'll start small, perhaps terraforming an uninhabited planet, or studying the unique stellar phenomenon. And you believe this will lead to peace? Xylix asked, skepticism clear in their tone. Not overnight, Zora admitted, but it's a start. It gives your people a chance to remember what it was like to create rather than destroy, to work together rather than against each other. Lieutenant Akira Tanaka, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Think of it as reprogramming. You've been stuck in a war subroutine for 800,000 years. We're offering you a chance to write a new program, one of cooperation and growth. The room fell silent as the two commanders considered the proposal. The human crew held their breath, acutely aware that the fate of multiple civilizations hung on this moment. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Xylix spoke. Your plan is not without merit, but it will face significant opposition from both our sides. Many of our people know nothing but war. Nix's form seemed to nod in agreement, and there are practical concerns. How do we ensure neither side takes advantage of the other during these experiments? Zara had anticipated this. That's where we come in. The UES Curiosity will serve as a neutral party, overseeing the experiments and mediating any disputes. We may be small, but we're impartial. And what do you gain from this, humans? Nix asked, suspicion coloring their tone. Zara stood, looking each alien commander in what she hoped was their equivalent of eyes. Peace, knowledge. The chance to learn from civilizations far older than our own. But more than that, the opportunity to make a difference, to help end a conflict that has raged for longer than our species has existed. That's what humanity does. We explore, we learn, and we try to leave things better than we found them. Her words seemed to resonate with the alien commanders. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they began to nod. "We will need to consult with our respective leaderships," Xylix said. "But we are willing to try this experiment." Nex's form pulsed in agreement. "It has been so long since we created rather than destroyed. Perhaps it is time we remembered how." As the meeting adjourned and plans began to take shape, Zara felt a surge of hope. They had taken the first step on a long and difficult road, but it was a step towards peace. However, their jubilation was short-lived. As they began to implement their plan, they encountered resistance from hardliners on both sides. Some saw the peace talks as a sign of weakness, others as a trick by the enemy. The UES Curiosity found itself navigating not just a physical battleground, but a political and ideological one as well. The first joint experiment, an attempt to stabilize a dying star, nearly ended in disaster when radical elements from both sides attempted to sabotage the project. It was only through quick thinking and diplomacy from Zara and her crew that catastrophe was averted. As the days stretched into weeks, the humans found themselves working tirelessly, mediating disputes, quelling rebellions, and struggling to keep the fragile peace process alive. The task seemed insurmountable, the obstacles endless. But with each small victory, each moment of cooperation between the once warring factions, hope grew. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, change began to take root. As Zara stood on the bridge of the Curiosity, watching members of the Eternal Armada and Void Collective working side by side to chart a nearby nebula, she allowed herself a small smile. They had a long way to go, but they had made a start. The smallest ship in humanity's fleet had taken on an 800,000-year-old war, armed with nothing but courage, ingenuity, and hope. And against all odds, they were making progress. The battle for peace continued, but for the first time in millennia, the end of the war seemed not just possible, but inevitable. Humanity had unleashed its greatest weapon, the power to bring people together, to find common ground in the face of impossible odds. The next phase of their journey would be crucial. The fragile peace they had brokered would face its greatest test, and the true mettle of humanity would be put to the ultimate challenge. The final battle. The UES Curiosity hung in space, a tiny island of hope in a sea of cosmic conflict. For weeks, Captain Zara Chen and her crew had worked tirelessly to broker peace between the Eternal Armada and the Void Collective. Progress had been made, but tensions remained high. The slightest misstep could reignite the war that had raged for 800,000 years. As Zara stood on the bridge, surveying the uneasy calm, klaxons suddenly blared to life. Lieutenant Akira Tanaka's fingers flew across his console. "Captain." Multiple ships decloaking on all sides. Before Zara could respond, the main view screen lit up with the image of an Eternal Armada officer, his energy form crackling with barely contained rage. "This is General Vex of the Eternal Armada. Your peace is a lie, a Void Collective trick. We will end this war once and for all." The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by the cold, emotionless voice of a Void Collective commander. "Eternal Armada aggression detected. Initiating total war protocols. The experiment has failed." Zara's heart sank as she watched hundreds of ships from both sides materialize around them, weapons charging. Everything they had worked for was unraveling before her eyes. "Captain," Dr. Lily Emerson called out, her voice tight with urgency, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups in both fleets. If they clash here, the resulting explosion could destabilize this entire sector of space." Zara's mind raced. They were out of time, out of options, but she refused to give up. "Raj," she called to her chief engineer, "remember that crazy idea you had? The one about using our deflector array to create a localized subspace field." Raj Patel's eyes widened. "Captain, that was just a theory. We've never tested it, and the power requirements would be—" "We're out of options, Raj," Zara cut him off. "Can you do it?" Raj hesitated for a split second, then nodded. "I'll need to reroute all power, including life support. We'll have maybe 10 minutes of air." "Do it," Zara ordered. She turned to her communications officer. Thomas, open a channel to both fleets. As Raj sprinted off the bridge towards engineering, Zara straightened her uniform and faced the view screen. The faces of General Vex and the Void Collective Commander appeared, along with dozens of other officers from both sides. "This is Captain Zara Chen of the UES Curiosity," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "In moments, both your fleets will open fire. The resulting clash will not only destroy you, but threaten this entire sector of space. We cannot allow this to happen." She paused, meeting the gaze of each alien leader. "For weeks, we've shown you that cooperation is possible. We've seen your people work together, create together. Are you really willing to throw all of that away?" General Vex's form flickered angrily. "Your words mean nothing, human. This war will end today." The Void Collective Commander's emotionless voice responded. "Aggression must be met with total annihilation. It is the only way." Zara shook her head. "No, it isn't, and we're about to prove it to you." At that moment, Raj's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we're ready." "Do it," Zara commanded. The lights on the bridge dimmed as every ounce of power was diverted to the deflector array. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a ripple of energy burst from the Curiosity, expanding outward at incredible speed. As the energy wave washed over the assembled fleets, something extraordinary happened. Weapons powered down. Shields flickered and died. Both the Eternal Armada and Void Collective ships hung motionless in space, their energy-based forms temporarily contained within the subspace field. What have you done?" General Vex demanded, his voice filled with a mix of rage and fear. Zara allowed herself a small smile. "We've given you a timeout. This subspace field has temporarily neutralized your energy-based technologies. For the next few minutes, you're no more capable of destruction than we are." The Void Collective Commander's voice held a note of surprise. "Impossible. Our technology is beyond your comprehension." "Perhaps," Zara conceded. "But sometimes, a fresh perspective can find solutions that have been overlooked for millennia. Now, you have a choice. In a few minutes, this field will collapse. You can either use that time to recharge your weapons and continue this endless war, or you can take this opportunity to talk. Really talk, without the threat of annihilation hanging over you." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You've forgotten how to exist without conflict. Let us remind you. On our ship, we have records of art, music, scientific discoveries from countless human cultures. Let us share them with you. Let us show you what's possible when beings come together in peace rather than war." For a long moment, silence reigned across the communication channels. Then, slowly, voices began to speak up. Not the leaders, but individual soldiers and officers from both sides. I remember music," one Eternal Armada soldier said hesitantly. "From before the war. It was beautiful." A Void Collective officer added, "We once built worlds instead of destroying them. Perhaps we could do so again." As more voices joined in, sharing long-buried memories of creation and cooperation, the mood began to shift. The anger and fear that had dominated moments before gave way to curiosity and, tentatively, hope. General Vex and the Void Collective Commander exchanged glances. For the first time in eons, they saw each other not as enemies, but as beings who shared a common history, a common pain. "Perhaps," General Vex said slowly, "we have been fighting for so long that we've forgotten why we started. Maybe it's time we remembered how to live instead of just survive." The Void Collective Commander's form seemed to soften. "It has been so long since we created. The humans speak of art, of music. I find myself curious." As the leaders began to tentatively discuss terms for a more permanent ceasefire, Zara felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had done it. They had brought 800,000 years of war to an end. But their victory was short-lived. As the subspace field began to weaken, Alarms blared across the Curiosity's bridge. "Captain," Akira called out, his voice tight with panic. "The power drain from the deflector array has destabilized our warp core. We got maybe 2 minutes before it breaches." Zara's blood ran cold. They had stopped the war, but at what cost? As she looked around at her crew, she saw not fear, but determination. They had known the risks when they signed up for this mission. They were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice for peace. But as Zara opened her mouth to give the order to abandon ship, an unexpected voice rang out across the communication channels. "Curiosity, this is Commander Xylix. Hold on. Help is coming." As the Curiosity's systems failed around them, Zara and her crew watched in awe as both Eternal Armada and Void Collective ships moved into position around their small vessel. Beams of energy, once used for destruction, now reached out to cradle the failing human ship. In that moment, as two ancient enemies came together to save a handful of humans they barely knew, the true power of diplomacy, of understanding, of peace, was demonstrated in a way no one could have imagined. The battle was over, the war had ended, and humanity, in its smallest ship, had changed the course of galactic history. Peace and reflection. The UES Curiosity drifted in space, its hull scared and systems barely functioning. But unlike the eerie silence that had dominated this sector for 800,000 years, the space around the small human vessel now buzzed with activity. Ships from both the Eternal Armada and the Void Collective moved in harmony, their energies intertwined in a delicate dance of reconstruction and healing. Captain Zara Chen stood on the makeshift bridge of an Eternal Armada flagship, watching as her beloved Curiosity was carefully tended to by beings who, mere hours ago, had known only war. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Your vessel will be fully operational within one of your Earth rotations, Captain Chen," Commander Xylix said, his energy form pulsing with what Zara had come to recognize as pride. "The combined knowledge of our civilizations has proven most efficient." Zara nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Thank you, Commander. Though I must admit, seeing Eternal Armada and Void Collective technology working in tandem is something I never thought I'd witness." A deep, resonant chuckle filled the room as Commander Nix materialized beside them. "Nor did we, Captain. It seems we owe your species a debt that can never be fully repaid." As Zara watched the reconstruction efforts, her mind wandered to the events that had led to this moment. The desperate gambit with the deflector array, the tense standoff, and the final breathtaking moment when both sides chose to save the Curiosity instead of reigniting their ancient war. It all seemed like a dream. "Tell me, Captain." Nex's voice pulled her from her reverie. "How does it feel to have ended a war that has raged for longer than your entire species has existed?" Zara considered the question carefully. "Honestly, it's overwhelming. But more than that, it's humbling. We didn't end your war. You did. We just reminded you that there was another way." Xylix's form shimmered in what Zora had come to interpret as a nod. "Perhaps, but it was your perspective, your humanity, that showed us that way. In our eons of conflict, we had forgotten the simple truths that your kind still holds dear." "And what truths are those?" Zara asked, genuinely curious. "That diversity is strength, not weakness," Nix responded. "That different viewpoints can coexist, even complement each other. That creation is more fulfilling than destruction." Zara smiled, feeling a swell of pride not just in her crew, but in her entire species. Those are lessons humanity had to learn the hard way. We've had our share of conflicts, our own brushes with annihilation. But each time, we've managed to pull back from the brink, to choose understanding over hatred. As they spoke, the alert chimed softly. A holographic display sprang to life, showing a sector of space that had been hotly contested for millennia. But now, instead of warships and weapons platforms, construction vessels from both sides worked together, building something new. "The first of many joint projects," Xylix explained. "A station dedicated to peace and scientific cooperation. We would be honored if you would name it, Captain. Zara felt a lump form in her throat. The magnitude of what they had achieved was finally sinking in. How about Renaissance Station? In human history, the Renaissance was a period of rebirth, of renewed interest in art, science, and human potential. It seems fitting. Both alien commanders nodded in approval. Renaissance Station it is, Nix declared, a symbol of our new beginning, made possible by humanity's wisdom. As the days passed, the full impact of the war's end began to ripple across the galaxy. Civilizations that had hidden themselves away, fearing to be caught in the crossfire of the eternal conflict, began to reemerge. Trade routes long abandoned were reopened. The combined knowledge and technology of the Eternal Armada and Void Collective now turned towards peaceful pursuits, ushered in an unprecedented era of scientific discovery and artistic expression. And at the heart of it all was the UES Curiosity and her crew. The small human vessel became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, peace was possible. Diplomats from hundreds of worlds came to learn from Zara and her team, eager to understand the human perspective that had achieved the impossible. As the Curiosity prepared to return home, laden with knowledge and goodwill from their new allies, Zara gathered her crew for one final meeting. "I won't lie to you," she began, looking each of them in the eye. "What we've done here, it's going to change everything. Earth, the entire human race, will never be the same. We've opened the door to a galaxy far more vast and complex than we ever imagined. It's going to be challenging, overwhelming at times, but I believe it's also going to be beautiful." Dr. Lily Emerson spoke up, her eyes shining with excitement. "Captain, when we left Earth, we were explorers. Now we're going to be teachers, diplomats, bridge builders between civilizations." Raj Patel nodded in agreement. "It's funny. We came out here hoping to make some small scientific discovery. Instead, we've helped reshape the entire galaxy. Talk about exceeding mission parameters." A ripple of laughter passed through the crew, a release of the tension they'd all been carrying. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious, not through force of arms, but through courage, ingenuity, and an unwavering belief in the power of peace. As the Curiosity began its long journey home, escorted by an honor guard of ships from a dozen different species, Zara took one last look at the sector that had been forever changed by their actions. The scars of war were still visible, but they were fading, replaced by the bright lights of cooperation and hope. In that moment, she understood the true meaning of humanity. Yeah. It wasn't about military might or technological superiority. It was about the indomitable human spirit, the ability to face the unknown with courage, to choose hope over fear, and to see the potential for peace even in the midst of an 800,000-year war. The smallest ship in humanity's fleet had taken on the greatest challenge in galactic history, armed with nothing but courage, ingenuity, and an unwavering belief in the power of understanding. They had changed the course of cosmic history. As Earth grew larger in their view screen, Zara Chen and her crew prepared to face their greatest challenge yet, showing humanity how to navigate a galaxy forever changed by their actions. But as they had proven time and time again, there was no challenge too great for the human spirit to overcome. The 800,000-year war was over. A new era of peace, discovery, and cooperation had begun, and humanity, in all its beautiful, chaotic, innovative glory, was ready to lead the way.